And before we do roll call, I would like to introduce our student representative, Gracie Schaefer from Hayes High School. She'll be helping us out with an important perspective from a high school student perspective, and that's important because we need a lot of different points of view. So thank you, Gracie, for volunteering your time and energy on the Shade Tree Commission. So we'll start with roll call.
Ms. Brewster?
Here.
Mr. Buck?
Here.
Mr. Carey? Mr. Glissman? Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Wilbur?
Here.
Ms. Woodmeek?
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Wright?
Here.
Chairman Olin?
Here.
Motion to excuse David Carey and Tom Glissman. We heard from both of them, and they had valid reasons not to come tonight.
I second.
Okay, vote please.
Ms. Brewster?
Yes.
Mr. Buck?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Wilbur?
Yes.
Ms. Woodmeek?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Wright?
Yes.
Chairman Olin?
Yes. Okay, next on the agenda is approval of the motion summary for the meeting held June 27th, 2017 as recorded and transcribed. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Vote please.
Ms. Brewster?
Yes.
Mr. Buck?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Wilbur?
Yes.
Ms. Woodmeek?
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Wright?
Yes.
Chairman Olin?
Yes. Okay, there's no member of the public here tonight, so we can skip through that and move right on to item number 4, discussion of Chapter 1168, Tree Preservation Regulations of the Planning and Zoning Code, pending submitted comments from the Commission. The deadline is August 14th. So since we haven't heard from Doug yet on this, Doug, is there anything you would like to talk about with regard to Chapter 1168? Okay, okay. Before I make a few comments, is there anyone else who would like to? Jim, we haven't heard from you about this either. Do you have questions or comments or anything like that?
Not really. Actually, I really haven't followed it along that much.
Okay, okay.
So I'm just kind of going on what I read in the motion summaries.
Oh, okay, good. And you got copies of Chapter 1168 from the previous agendas that were included. Okay, so you know the content in there of what's said in Chapter 1168 and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I may have some. I mean, go ahead and make your comments.
Oh, right,
I don't have
yeah.
really anything.
Yeah, we have till
Specific.
Ted asked that we write up a little something, a summary of whatever our recommendations are, and I wrote up a little, just a Word document of some of my recommendations, and everyone, hopefully, if you have recommendations, you just write them down and we'll share them and then submit them all to Ted by the 14th.
He wanted me to reiterate that he wants those to him in writing by the 14th so that he can prepare a draft for your consideration at the August meeting.
Okay.
Oh, great. That's great. Okay, thank you.
That was going to be my question. We were going to vote on it at some point. So August, we'll.
He would like to have all the comments so he can incorporate them with anything that staff has also. I know one of the cleanup was changing it from parks and recreation or something to the proper terminology
Correct.
now.
So everything we've talked about, though,
He's
we
been
don't
writing
have to
those down.
reiterate that in an email. We don't need to do
He's
that.
been writing them down, but
Gotcha.
couldn't hurt
Yeah, I still do.
Okay.
if you're going along. But please send those to him so that he can work on that document.
Will do. Yeah, thanks, Linda. Anyone else have any comments about the Chapter 1168 recommendations? Okay, let me explain briefly to Gracie what's going on here. Chapter 1168 is the part of the city code that describes Can she get a copy of it at some point?
Mhm.
Okay.
She should,
Or did
I
she
will
already
send
get
it.
it?
well, in the previous packets, but that's easy to send a new copy over.
Okay.
So,
It describes what the city code is for preserving and replacing trees due to development. Okay, and we've had some input from the Building Institute of America, I think it's called. It's the lobbying group for developers. And they wanted us to take a look at our policies because they thought that they were, quote, onerous and expensive, unquote, according to the Building Institute of America. So we decided that we were going to go through the entire chapter, go through all the regulations, and I'm in fact recommending that they be strengthened, not weakened. So we are going through that document and those policies and making recommendations as we think is proper and effective for maintaining healthy urban forest in our community. So you're welcome to look through that and make any recommendations you would like to make. So, and email us. She has all our email addresses and everything. Stay in touch if before August 14th you have questions about something that you're reading in chapter 1168. Email Ted or email one of us, email me, email somebody, ask questions. We'll keep a dialogue going so that everybody can feel comfortable with what we're contributing in terms of recommendations, okay? So just keep that in mind. We'd love to hear what your perspective is on this stuff.
Can I quickly interject something?
Yeah, sure.
Excuse me. The BIA, the Building Industry Association, may have triggered the discussion, but this is a good opportunity for us to look at, to have a comprehensive look at the city ordinances. You know, it's in a way, you know, it helps us. Otherwise, without the BIA, we may not have taken that step.
That's right. And a lot of the stuff that we looked at from 1168 was surprising to me. I didn't even know it was in there. And so it was a good thing to happen. And it's actually good that we're going through it in a comprehensive way. And we'll look forward to hearing from you too, Doug, on whatever you think needs to change or whatever you think is should be kept the same or whatever. So anyway, like I said before, and my only comment is on this is that I've already, you guys have heard my recommendations in the past, and you got that email from me a couple of weeks ago with regard to the BIA's responsibility to demonstrate that it is onerous and expensive, because you know, for them to come in and make these types of accusations, I think for that, especially about policies that have been in place for many years and fees that have not been upwardly adjusted for inflation for at least 8 years. I think if they're going to make those kinds of statements, they owe us some real evidence, numerical evidence, economic evidence in terms of a typical budget, typical development budget that clearly demonstrates that these fees are somehow a burden or somehow prohibit them from doing these developments. I personally have a hard time believing that they're anything but a minuscule percentage of the total development budget. I think that would just be the polite thing for the BIA to do, the civilized thing for the BIA to do, rather than coming in here and demanding that we give them defensible numbers. If they have a problem, we don't work for them. I don't know where Mr. Hills lives, but I don't think he lives in the city of Delaware. I don't think his kids go to the schools here. I don't know where he lives. Maybe he does, but I question whether he has a stake in our community like we do as citizens of this community. So,
And, excuse me, I don't believe Mr. Hills is there anymore with the BIA.
oh, he's not?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I think he's taken a different position, so there's a new representative.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So
Okay.
that just occurred,
Oh, that just happened.
not like 5 minutes ago.
Well, I don't view it as you are presenting it as an ethical and moral issue, and maybe, that's one way of looking at it. But from my point of view, the BIA has a legitimate interest in keeping costs down. I mean, that's their business model. That's business. However, I totally agree with you that the burden of proof rests on them. They've made some outlandish statements that our fees are unreasonably high and onerous, etc. They have so far presented no proof whatsoever, no comparison. So I think the ball is in their court. They need to convince us that indeed Dublin and Powell and Worthington and Westerville have cheaper fees. If so, the Schaefer Commission would certainly carefully listen to their presentation. But so far, I've seen no evidence whatsoever to the effect that our fees are above average. In fact, we have heard from our planning director, David Eflin, that our fees are on the lower end, of the spectrum.
Right, that's correct. I was at that meeting too. Right, and so I was actually looking forward to Ted being here to present what his figures. I thought that they were going to come up with that, the per caliper inch.
Fee schedule?
Yeah, the fee schedule, the rate per caliper inch for replacement to put in the tree fund. But what I guess I'll do is tomorrow, I'll email Ted and ask him if he and Dave Eflin have made those calculations yet. And if they could send us those calculations, that figure, before the August 14th meeting. But in the recommendations that I wrote, which somewhere. Anyway, I wrote in the document that I created that I'm waiting to hear from the BIA to hear what their numbers are, because I think they owe us that. And I'm waiting to hear what numbers that Dave and Ted come up with until I understand and accept those numbers. I'm sticking with the $115 per caliper inch, which is nothing more than the $100 an inch fee that we've been charging for years and years, that hasn't been updated to account for inflation in at least the last 8 years. That's all that is. So in a sense, it's not even an increase. So we'll see what we hear from those guys and go from there, I guess. Any comments? Any more comments?
I just want to mention, I think we talked about this last month, might have been 2 months ago, but when we were talking about a fee schedule, I think I proposed an idea that if there was going to be pushback on our flat rate of so much per caliper inch, that we go with some sort of schedule. So for the first 50 trees or 50.
Oh, right.
So that if you had a developer that was clearing a large area with a lot of medium-sized trees, that their hit wouldn't be quite so.
So a price
Hard.
break per.
Yeah.
For volume.
Yeah.
A volume price.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so
And I
write
know
all that
Ted-
kind of stuff
well,
down.
when we talked about it, Ted wrote it down, I just didn't know if I needed to.
It can't hurt to send it to him again, just
Probably be
as a
good
reinforcement.
idea. And I'll try to include something, because mine is just a rough draft and I plan on, I thought I was going to be revising it after tonight's meeting based on what I thought Ted was going to bring in. But, so yeah, I think it wouldn't hurt to get, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a fancy document. Mine certainly isn't.
Well, if
Just
we have
write down
submission
whatever.
by August 14th, we'll have a quorum by our next meeting, right? We can clarify at that point, the end of August.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
We put the 14th because the package should be going out the following week.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A little bit of time.
August meeting is on August 22nd?
29th.
29, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, no, wait a
Mhm.
minute, you're right.
The
28th.
packet has to go out to you guys on the 15th.
It will be the 22nd because there's 5 Tuesdays.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yep.
So if you can get anything, the earlier the better.
Right.
It's going to give us,
Right.
So the price break for quantity,
Yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
even know what might be reasonable, but I just remember having that discussion.
Right, and that's a great point, and that's something that I forgot to include. I'm glad you brought that up, because I forgot to include that in my stuff. So yeah, whatever, it's better to have too much written down than not enough. Too many ideas than not enough ideas, I think. So,
And you don't even have to put it in a Word document or anything. If you just email it and just like bullet points would be fine.
oh, okay.
so he can prepare?
Yeah.
Is that, okay.
So that he can pull it all together and come back with a document for your
Because,
review.
yeah, in all fairness to Ted and Dave, they weren't expecting this, I don't think. They didn't know that they were gonna have to do all this stuff before May or before April. So, yeah, try to get it to them as soon as we can.
And we're into CIP and before long it'll be budget. So the sooner he can work on it,
Okay,
the more thorough he will have time, he will have to do that.
all right. Anybody have any more questions or comments about this? Okay, then. Welcome back, Doug. It's time for the arborist report.
Thank you. It's good to be back, I think.
Really, we do welcome you back, on just, on a personal note,
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
welcome back.
What I did was I just went back through, there was no street tree pruning per se done in an organized, as part of our plan. Basically what was taken care of was call-ins and CSR requests. What I found was that we had gotten, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. We'll start with tree and stumps. We did remove 3 large caliper trees by contractors from city sidewalk lawn areas during these 3 months. There were 11 smaller caliper trees that were removed by the city staff from sidewalk areas. And 5 large caliper trees were removed at Oak Grove Cemetery, deemed that they were hazardous. We also had more trees that were damaged just this last weekend in the storm, Saturday morning, at Blue Limestone and Bicentennial Park particularly, and some of the surrounding streets. And staff has been diligently getting that cleaned up in the last, well, since Saturday. So I think we're done at this point, but still a branch or two pops up somewhere where we see it hanging. During the 3 months, there were 57 trees that were pruned for street and signage clearing. As I said, that was basically those trees were generated by CSRs, citizen requests coming in to have the work done, or a safety issue where signs or traffic lights were blocked by a tree. So those were needed to do for safeties. Currently, we have 121 trees in the backlog still remaining this year. That does not include the total from this year, which is 23, which is going to go up. We know that's probably going to double by the end of the year. That's just typical. So looks like that we're probably going to be able to plant back not only the backlog this year, but also what we actually removed this year too. So issues, concerns, the ongoing project, hopefully that'll ramp back up in the next couple of weeks. As soon as I'm cleared, physically able to go, I'll be taking crew out and getting back on the streets. The mortality count, it's in progress. It should be done by the end of this month or by the end of August for the contractor plannings. And also Ted wanted me to let you know that the tree fund budget, current funds in the tree fund is $242,880.72.
242.
880.72.
Thank you.
And that's all I have.
I have a question for you, Doug. At
Yes.
the corner of Hefner Street, and I should have looked at the side street. It's the first one, the first street that goes between Hefner and Pennsylvania, closest to the high school. There's a big dead white oak. And
Okay.
it appears to be on private property, but that's a street that, the side street doesn't have sidewalks or curbs, and there's no tree lawn on Hefner. So I was just wondering about that tree.
I'd have to take a look at
It
it.
looks like the one, remember on Liberty last year or the
Mhm.
year before, we talked about a big dead white oak that was on someone's property and they were slow to take it down. The only reason I bring it up is because if it was on public or on a right of way and you were going to take it down, it would be good to have it done before school starts because that area is real congested.
Where's it?
It's Chestnut.
Chestnut, thank you.
So Hefner and,
Chestnut. It's really close, you know how Hefner dead ends into the high school?
right,
Okay, it's just one
Just there.
short block. It's not even a whole block, I don't think, but
because I know the city just took down one at Hefner and Sandusky, right in front of the dairy
oh,
depot. It was,
was that this past weekend?
yeah,
Yeah,
right in front of the dairy
Yeah.
depot, and they were on it. I would like that. It went from being a live tree to a dead tree to the arborists were there taking it down. I was impressed. It was swift. It was, yeah. It went from looking lovely to not, to dead,
What was it?
completely dead. It was a maple.
yeah.
Yeah, it went from being completely leafed out to
Wow.
brown
Bruce,
leaves. Yeah, it was sad.
This one's been not looking good for a couple of years, but this is the first summer it has had no leaves on it, the white oak that I'm talking about.
Okay. I'll check it out
Yeah.
tomorrow. Actually, I'll probably drive by it tonight, but I'll check it out.
The question, it's not a question of whether or not it's dead or needs to be removed. The question is whether it's right away or private. Is there a way to nudge people if it is on private?
We do. What happens is we notify the zoning department that there's a violation and
Okay.
that it needs to be rectified. They will send them a certified letter to a standard letter.
Okay.
And then the homeowner will have, the property owner will have 30 days to remove that tree before the city will take its next course of action against them.
Out of curiosity, to remove such a huge tree is very costly. You know, it could be $1,000 right there. What would happen in the case of indigent people? Would the city assume the cost? No, or is the homeowner liable?
That would be a decision made a lot higher up than me. What happens is if they're not compliant and they can't afford to have it done, the city will do it out of a safety issue. But then what happens is a lien will be put against the property for the tree,
I see.
for the cost of the removal of the tree.
When they were doing the sidewalk project, didn't they add the cost onto your property taxes?
That was
Uh,
one option,
Yeah, okay. That's what I remember.
yeah, an assessment.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Doug?
Were you done, Doug?
I am done. Go ahead, Tom. I
Okay,
am
I have
done.
a
I know
couple,
you do.
couple questions. Under Roman numeral 4, you are talking about, forgive me, I'm going through cataract testing and surgery these days, so my vision is not the best. Under Roman numeral 4, you're talking of undesirable or destructive trees. That caught my attention. Are we talking about individual trees that are undesirable and destructive, or are we talking about entire species that you hope to remove from the city premises?
It would be individual trees.
Okay, yeah, all right, good. That was a little ambivalent to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also have at the last meeting, I brought to the attention a dead ash tree in Marvin Lane Park. I'm happy to report that the tree was gone, within a week, very swiftly, and officially it was gone by the end by the beginning of the next week. A related question, there is a missing tree in front of City Hall. What are we replacing downtown trees with these days?
Well,
More crab apples, or as the mayor suggested, maybe we should transition to cherry trees, or?
no.
That would be aesthetically
I
not very
told-
pleasing
I-
to have a mixture, a cocktail of trees downtown.
Well, I told when Mayor Riggle, she just got back from Japan and she was all gung ho about cherry trees. And I just said, well, we'll see you at a Shade Tree Commission meeting so that we can explain to her that, well, crab apples or cherries, they both do their thing on the sidewalk.
Of course, yeah.
But
Like dogs.
I have started to look at different species of cherry. I think there are some that are viable. Some that are better than crab apples are.
oh, really?
That don't drop as big a fruit, don't drop as messy a fruit, and still will provide a bloom, and they're pretty hardy. So I'm going to wait to present that a little bit later in the year. Right now, that tree was taken out because it was hit by a car. There was an accident there, and the tree was not going to survive the accident. It had been uprooted and a lot of heavy damage to the trunk of the tree. And so actually, we will be removing the stump of the tree, and until a decision's made on what kind of. Right now, an imperial honey locust is what we are supposed to be replacing downtown trees with. That was the decision of the Shade Tree Commission. So that's what I'll have slated to go in there. However, if we do decide to do a cherry tree, I think that would be a really good location to try one out in, just because it'll have high traffic. Definitely it'll get salted when we do sidewalks at City Hall. It'll definitely be tested by the environments right there. So it'll be a good test. And it's not, the thing about the cherry is it'll blend in very well with the existing crab apples that we have now. They're not going to stand out, that they're going to be a lot taller or a lot wider. They're going to pretty much be very similar in shape and size and bloom.
And given the sister city relationship between Delaware and Sakata, Japan, I think that would be an ideal spot, another reason to try out a cherry tree, in front of City Hall.
Yeah.
I agree. I was wondering how the Shade Tree Commission would lean towards an opportunity as such, right there at City Hall. I lean towards the cherries. I think not only like a crab apple, do you have spring bloom and you have a summer fruit, but you also have a fall color and the salt tolerance. So I as well was curious to see how this would turn out.
The Huygen cherry is a really good cherry tree. It just produces a small blackberry.
The weeping Huygen?
It's no, the standard.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
we wouldn't put a weeping one in.
okay.
What I would like, maybe shade tree that I kind of would task you guys with is we're getting to the point that crab apples are starting to die off more and more. We've lost, well, that one was by accident, but we did lose 3 last year downtown, and we replaced them with the Imperial honey locust. But I think we need to, while we're doing a diversification out on the streets, out in the suburbs, or out in the subdivisions, that we should look at doing some diversification downtown also if we're going to. So we need to look at tree species that will do well, but also are also going to be beneficial to the environment that they'll be in, so that they're not, no tree is going to be perfect downtown.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
Well, I was going to bring that up after I heard what the balance in the tree fund was. You know, several years ago, I think before you arrived, Main Street Delaware came to us and wanted us to make this drastic change downtown. They didn't want those crabs down there. And there was no money. I mean, it was like, we were in the midst of the recession, the Great Recession, and pull up healthy trees and put something else seemed, you know, bad politics, bad PR, you know, bad finances. So this might be an opportunity to really start moving in a different direction.
well, we will be using some of that money. Wow, we will be using some of that money, I believe, for planning this fall.
Yeah.
And
But
then-
I don't know how far that would, I don't know if this is a very large amount or if it's what you would spend.
There would be, to remove all the trees downtown would be a very costly.
How many are there right along?
98,
98, okay.
97.
I'll be honest, the hometown I'm from is not that far from here, and they did exactly that. They removed all of the downtown trees with the anticipation of replacing them with something that suited the aesthetics and the environment. But it's awful. As they remove them, it's hard to drive through the downtown of my hometown. It's so, it's beyond that even.
They never did the
kindest way.
replacement? They took
Not
them
yet,
out?
not
Okay.
yet, but they replaced them all at once, was the goal. So they took them down with the anticipation of replacing them in the fall. It's not desirable. So,
Yeah.
you know, as we have as needed
Yeah.
is definitely, especially when you say 90-some trees, upwards of 100 trees, sure.
Yeah, and
Well,
there is research that indicates that spending, and this is a point that I have to add to Chapter 1168, the benefits of trees that need to be added to Chapter 1168. One is increased consumer spending in consumer districts. And I just talked, and it sounds like, oh, how could that be? But there is evidence, research to back that up, and I can do the citation for that. And I was talking to a couple guys just recently, one tonight, just before I came here, and these are 2 local guys that are involved in historic building preservation and a lot of community stuff. And they're very aware of that too. So I think that's one of the things that we should keep in mind, not let what happened in your hometown, and I'm sure it won't, but I like the idea of diversification, because then, like any system, it'll be, any system is going to be more stable the more species we're dealing with.
But aesthetically, as you're driving through downtown, I mean, diversification is good, but from a design aspect, you have your bloom at the same time, maybe even on a one street block or the next street block. I mean, the crab apples are not my first choice by any means, but they're blooming at the same time, they're fruiting at the same time. Maybe fall color if they arrive at it, or if they get there.
Well, is there a way then to incorporate diversity into design
Yes,
as well?
saying, blocks here or blocks there, we say Sandusky to William and Winter, and then Winter to Union or to Franklin or something to that effect. But, coming in and seeing that we're changing from crabs to imperial honey locust, we're going from a bloom and a fruit and a fall color and a decorative winter interest to green. Or not, yeah, and you know, and
And
you
they
can't
lose their
please
leaves
everyone. We
early.
always go back to Shade Tree Commission, and you can't please everyone. Nobody wants that fruit walking in and out, and nobody wants those tiny little leaves of the honey. We're not gonna please everybody, but what we have to do is remember the aesthetics.
Well, the other takeaway for me from the Main Street Delaware's visit to the Shade Tree Commission on a couple different occasions was they also want to be involved in the decisions and the planning. And I don't, and they
But they're not
felt,
here, are they?
no, and we're not, that's not on our agenda. They would have no reason to be here. But if we got to that point, it would be good for us to somehow.
We should definitely consult with Main Street Delaware then, you know, if and when we get
Don't
to
you
that
recall
point.
that, Tom?
Oh, yeah, very well, yes. Mhm. Yeah. But in the meantime, you know, I'm inclined to say, let's, you know, pilot, you know, one little cherry tree in front of City Hall and test it and see how it withstands, you know, salt and traffic and weather and vandalism and whatever.
The hike, it is a Japanese species or an Asian species, isn't it?
Chairman Nolan, I am on the Main Street board, so yeah, very special. So I talked to them at their August meeting.
Good, bring it up and impress upon them that their input is always, I'm not speaking for the Shade Tree Commission, but maybe I am. The input, indirectly, the input would always be welcome here. I remember years where maybe not Main Street itself, but individual members of Main Street Delaware had very bitter and even hostile feelings and comments about the Shade Tree Commission and blamed us for certain things that we were not responsible for. So it's good to maintain good, you know, constructive, positive relations.
Right. Okay.
I have a couple other questions for Doug. I'm sorry. That was a long discussion prompted by one little comment. Yeah, Doug, you mentioned the storm over last weekend, you know, and I had a question too. I have not been to Blue Limestone. I'll bike down there. I noticed a lot of damage in the Bicentennial Park. You know, trees came down there and took the power lines with them, etc. We did not have a tornado, did we? There was a small corridor of damage, and other sections of the city seemed to be untouched, and nothing happened really.
Well, nothing happened between Blue Limestone and Bicentennial Park. Nothing happened on the west side of Roland, or north side of Roland Street, right beside Bicentennial Park. So it's, I guess it was straight line winds is what they were saying, is what it,
Okay.
what it
There was a wall cloud over town, and that usually means there's some kind of wind shear
You know,
in
something
the area.
out of the ordinary must have happened. Any damage in the cemetery?
None
Okay.
that we're aware of.
All right.
Nothing major, at least, maybe some small limbs here or there.
Okay, and one last question I have for Doug, and that's a transition to a topic I will bring up later. There is a new planning commission and city council discussed the new development, Burr Oak Commons, which is, you know, west of Kroger West. And so the immediate question for the arborist that I have is the text, the narrative states, the applicant provided a tree survey for the entire site, and the count included 488 trees with 4,414 caliber inches. So the operative word here is the developer provided the tree count. did the city verify that, double check it? Are we accepting that, in good faith, or, what? Are we, trust but verify would be my philosophy. Are we verifying that this is indeed the number of major trees and caliber inches that we have provided?
Typically we do, Tom. We go out to the sites and we'll do spot checks on them to make sure that that they are capturing the trees that they say that they are. We just did, I have not done Burr Oak Commons yet because I haven't gotten the plans from planning yet for it. And last month, you guys did get an informational pack.
Only an informational.
Right, so we haven't gotten their final plans yet, so that's why, as soon as I get those, I will go out and spot check, because they haven't
You got
begun
plan?
construction.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right.
Typically, that's the way we do that. There, honestly, I've not had a case where I've questioned their discretion. They've been, so all the developers so far have been more than, because the people going out and doing the count are people like me. They're the tree people. They're going out and they're looking at the trees and they're counting them, and they're doing it pretty fairly. We're going to look at a plan tonight that has the McDonald's, and we did. We had a question on some of the Crimson King maples at the McDonald's, and I went up and spot checked them, and yeah, they're no better than fair condition. They put dying on the plans further, so they that wouldn't be replaceable. We only require that they replace good trees. Fair or poor condition trees are not required to be replaced, and anything above 6 inches must be, if it's good, must be counted into the caliper inch. So that's what we look at when we go out. And when you look at a site, a lot of people see all these trees that you can really fast say, okay, well, that one's not 6 inch, that's not 6 inch. It narrows it down very quickly. So, so typically that's what happens. I haven't had any issues where I've said, no, this isn't right. You guys are not counting enough trees.
So it's usually the developer will hire an environmental services company to do those
They
surveys.
do, yes.
Yeah. That's good to know.
And as soon as I get the final plans for Burr Oak, when they're going to come before Shade Tree Commission, is when I'll go out and make sure, because they can't start construction or clearing until it's approved. So.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anything else for Doug? Okay, staff comments. Ted's not here.
The report that I handed out is the Parks and Natural Resources second quarter report. That's a report that Ted has just started compiling at the end of the quarter that recaps everything that department did for the second quarter. Numbers, if you have any questions, feel free to email me or Ted for clarification.
I was looking over this. This is pretty nice.
He did a good job.
This is really nice. My kids don't do a lot of things in the community, and right here's their swim team and how many swimmers were involved up and down from last year and in the breakdown.
What page is it?
This is page 6, and it's just interesting to see, who's involved and how many students or how many kids are involved or the community involved. And what I love is the percentage of change. How many people are involved. This is really interesting. I mean, for example, the swimmers, the Delaware Darts, the Field of Sting, 232 swimmers are swimming at Blue Limestone in the city contributing. I'm sorry, Mingo. Yeah.
We
were at Blue Limestone, and my kids were like, we're not swimming in there. We know how to swim, we're not getting in.
Survivors.
Yeah, we were just there. That's what made me think about it. I saw a beaver dam. We took the kids
Oh,
down
really?
there, and they saw a beaver dam, right down from, you take the little path up from the.
Well, that could be trouble for some of the trees.
It could very
down
well
there.
be trouble,
Yeah.
but,
It's cool though.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. The kids loved, my little kids loved it. But just flipping through this, I mean, I really like the breakdown of this and I like the year change and the percentage of change and what's going on in the community. This is really impressive.
I'll pass it along.
Yeah, I like this.
Have they hired a new watershed coordinator yet?
Not that I've heard.
Okay.
Haven't got the notification.
Okay. Okay, so that's it for staff comments. Member comments? Any Shade Tree Commission members want to make comments?
I have one.
Go for it.
Let me, we already talked about, something. Yeah, my major concern is the Burr Oak development, and I have something else for you later.
How many acres is that?
I believe it's only 20 acres. It's a small area, and they're building apartment complexes for people 55 and older, mostly, 80%.
Have you looked at the site yet?
I'm familiar with the area. I've not been there to double check everything, but the western end, close to 37, is wooded area, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. Let me find where do I have it? I had to enlarge a piece of paper. Maybe I cannot find it right now, but here are copies for you. Would you mind taking one to Doug? Thank you very much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I counted that correctly.
Thank you.
Okay. I cannot find my enlarged copy, but that's fine. I will have to, steer it very closely. Burr Oak Commons. We have not seen final development plans yet, but look at the tree at the very bottom of the page. Tree removal and replacement. That's what I'm talking about. What the planning staff is proposing is, okay, there are 488 trees with 4,000 plus caliber inches. Planning Commission seems to be proposing, I heard them state, Lance Schultz stated that at the Planning Commission meeting, and at City Council it was discussed. Planning wants to replace not all trees that are removed. They want to put the wooded area on the close to 37 west in a permanent conservation easement and preserve them in lieu of tree replacements. And so it's the same situation we had at the Dempsey Woods. Remember Dempsey? They put a certain. They did not replace, remove trees. They created a preservation area
that later ended up being protected through the efforts of the students in the summer program. Anyway.
Okay.
Because just as a footnote, those trees would have been preserved anyway due to the students that attended the board meeting and convinced them to set aside to write a resolution prohibiting any development from that area anyway. But in the case of Dempsey, everybody thought, oh, well, this is just a one-time shot and they're giving these guys a break because it's a school district.
Yes, David Eflin promised us. It was a unique situation.
And it's because it's a school district. But this is different. These guys are making money. This is a business.
Now, this is now a developer. And if one developer is allowed to get away with something like this, other developers will come and make similar requests. The idea of the proposal, certainly I'm all for preserving the woods that are there. But the idea, the thing is, we'll remove half the woods, half the trees in the area, and let the other half stand. That does not result in a
Replacement.
in a replacement. It does not result in maintaining the tree canopy in the city of Delaware. That is what our charter mandates us. The idea is to maintain the existing tree canopy and not see that reduced. A scheme like this would result in a net reduction of the tree canopy. Yes, we promise we'll protect some trees, but the cost is all the other trees, have to go. Now, in actuality, it's not going to be that extreme because some trees will be replaced. There will be street trees and landscaping trees, etc. But the scheme will result in a net reduction of the tree canopy in the city of Delaware. And that is not what the letter and spirit of the city ordinances say. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. This sets a precedent for future developers.
I'm fairly familiar with that property, having driven past it 3 or 4 times a week for the last 40 years, I think. It's an old farm site. There was a house up there as recently as maybe 15 years ago and a barn. And the forest that exists now is just secondary growth. I mean, it's what's grown up after they tear down the house, probably tear down the barn. I remember 2 or 3 big cottonwoods, sort of close to 37. We're not talking about a lovely forest that people are going to want to walk through. We're talking about maybe a new forest with a lot of scrub species. So when I see, 488 trees, that's alarming. But when I look at what's there and I'm like, oh, it's probably not a big deal. As long as there is some recuperation of their, what we normally would expect for costs if they're removing the trees.
But, and I appreciate that, and a lot of those trees might even be alien and invasive species that would need to be removed anyway. However, Tom's point is still well made. That, maybe in this particular case, it's not the environmental disaster but it could lead to other situations if the precedent is allowed. And it was, they did say that the Dempsey situation was unique for a couple of reasons, because they're dealing with the school district. We wanted to give them a break on that, and that it was a unique situation. They didn't anticipate this being a recurring strategy for development. Because I could see this happening where, maybe they would even target acquire forested areas which should not be developed, and knowing that, oh, well, if we just leave this chunk here, we can do whatever we want over here. So it might make some very nice forested areas more attractive to development if this kind of thing is allowed to happen.
That's why sort of making blanket policies are difficult, because you're never dealing with the same exact setting. So
I have a question for you. I mean, do we know for sure that the 488 trees that are counted in this aren't some of these trees in this preservation area? Isn't that part
many
of
are outside that preservation area.
I don't recall looking at that preliminary plan that they had a preservation area.
There was no, that's why we sent it back, because there was no tree information on.
There was no inventory.
Right.
There was no inventory done on
And
it,
I remember just asking whether or not there was going to be another curb cut on 37, or if they were going to go in the it's not Lexington, what is it? Lantern Chase. They were going to get.
Or the Kroger entrance, that was the alternative.
Around the back.
Secondary,
Yeah.
right. Well, this is stating specifically one or or the other, compliance with 1168, or the schedule to propose it. It's one or the other, is what I'm reading this as.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Yes, the way it is phrased leaves options,
Right.
open. But I've not seen such a proposal before. That is unique. That is something new. That planning is clearly leading city council in a certain way. They suggested, they explicitly suggested this is the way to go. And so they are strongly leaning towards this approach. And I think it needs to be vetted, with the Shade Tree Commission and maybe other bodies, because it does set a precedent for the future. So that's my primary.
Yeah, they're aware of compliance and what they need to do, but they're wondering if they can get away with doing this instead. Maybe that's what I'm reaching for, is can they get away
Well,
with it?
I
Is
think,
that what you're thinking?
Yes, I would not have phrased it this way, but yes, they are testing the waters and see what they can get away with.
Like the
It's
BIA.
another BIA, thing from a different angle now.
So
I'd like to-
staff here is Dave Eflin? Is staff, when they say staff believe, who is staff?
Well, he's the planning director. Of course, the department consists of many people, but he's ultimately, the buck stops with him, yes.
I would be interested in knowing not just that there are 488 trees, but the sizes and species. I'd like to see a complete inventory before I think that would give me a lot more information
Right.
about whether or not that's an option. But that should be.
And
an
that's what
option.
we've asked the developer for.
Okay.
Okay. But even if they were mostly junk trees, alien invasive trees or mulberry,
I understand
less than
yeah.
desirable species,
It's the issue.
it's a slippery backdoor.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if they had in mind what happened at Dempsey. I shudder to think that that's the case, but I would not want it to go any further than what we did, thinking that we were helping.
I think you're going to find that I'm looking at it right now, the map. Unfortunately, I can't show everything, but a lot of the trees that are counted are in that area that they're talking about putting it into a preservation area.
Is that the area between 37 and sort of the top of that hill where they're going to put?
It's
the
between
apartments?
37 and the Kroger's
Yeah.
parking lot area, that area and through there. And there's a large number of trees in that area.
I hate to be so bold, is why is it not important to do both? I mean, to be in compliance with chapter 1168.
But they will be.
And
But they will be.
both. And have the permanent tree preservation.
I
even if
think
they
that what
aren't
they're saying is
desirable.
they're not going to remove those trees, so they don't have to count those towards the
Towards their
removal.
towards their caliper.
And those will be put in a
Development.
preserve to not ever be removed.
But I think that the tiny little word in question here is the or,
Or potentially be counted
to be,
toward the removal.
Well, I don't, who put this together? Where did this come from?
That's the.
I don't know where this
report from the
came
planning department.
Okay, this came from planning
Yes.
department? Okay. Well, it's definitely something I can follow up with,
yeah.
well,
Well, I mean, bravo for if they want to
Do both.
do both. That's phenomenal. I mean, what a.
And in some communities, there are developments that do both,
Mhm.
and successful communities that maintain their developability, I guess, I don't know if that's a word or not, and standard of living, do stuff like that. And Tom's other point about the total canopy reduction is still valid too, because, we're trying to preserve the canopy. And just, playing the shell game with trees. I mean, that's what happened at Dempsey, and there was a net canopy reduction. There was a net decrease in caliper inches. And we did that because we're giving the school district a break, and it was a unique situation, so.
So Tom, are you bringing this as you see a double-edged sword here, where we could see a loss? I guess where I'm struggling is I like the concept of this, this preservation
Oh, absolutely,
area.
yes.
Yeah, which we all, I'm sure we all do, or we wouldn't be here, but the compliance or, is that your question?
Well, it's a slippery slope. It depends on, different people will interpret that differently. You know, there are loopholes in here, and that's maybe one way of looking at it.
So saying,
I see people can cut corners, slip through loopholes and get away with less than ideal plans. Our goal is, according to the city ordinance, is to maintain the tree canopy of the city of Delaware. Not increase it, but also not decrease it. Maintain it. A plan like this would result in a net decrease, and that's what bothers me. Or might result in a net. Nothing is certain. I think they're testing. If I see, normally this would not even be brought to the attention of the Safety Commission. There are many things that are discussed and approved without our knowledge or the knowledge of other boards and committees and commissions. And so, that's where I come in. I do monitor, the planning commission and city council, and I pay attention to such things. But that's one way, for developers to see, are they paying attention? What do we get away with? Let's, push the envelope a little further. And I sense, a lot of pressure, pushback from various angles, from developers, from the DIA. I think they are really testing the city, and because Delaware is a hot development area now, Delaware County and Delaware City. The city and the county are expanding, the population is increasing, there are new development areas, popping up left and right and everywhere. And this is a hot territory for developers. So it is a testing ground, for them. And I think, we are in the middle of a battle that many people are not aware of. It is not articulated as a battle. Nobody has defined it as such, but I sense that a battle is going on over the future and the soul, maybe, of the city and the county. Maybe I'm overstating the case a little bit.
well, battle and diligence, I think, are similar in some cases, and I think your diligence is fabulous here. I think really looking at the fine notes here, to me, is really important. Thank you for that.
Yeah, let's call it due diligence. We should do not more, but also not less, but to exercise due diligence, within the mandate that we have. Of course, keep in mind that, the Safety Commission is only an advisory body. We make recommendations, but the ultimate decisions are made by other entities. But within that mandate, I want to keep up our principles and morals and ethics, and adhere to our mandate and standards.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, do you have another point that you wanted to bring up?
Just something else for your attention. It's more fun. Thank you. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm a member of Sustainable Delaware, Ohio, and one of the members brought to our attention the concept of forest bathing. which has nothing to do with swimming, and it's not, running on naked in the forest. Forest bathing is a Japanese concept. And so I investigated a little further. You can find good references on Wikipedia. National Public Radio, NPR, had a program a couple of weeks ago, which triggered the whole thing. So the idea is, people total immersion in forests. And in Japan, there are many medical health studies have been done to test the chemicals released by various tree species. Conifers in particular have a very pungent, smell. And some of these chemicals have antimicrobial capacities, and so antibacterial capacity. So the Japanese believe that spending time within forests will make your body healthier. It'll boost your immune system. It's not just new age stuff. It's all chemical, medical based. And will also lead to improved mental health, etc. So I was not even aware of the concept until maybe a week or a couple ago. So I want to bring that to your attention. It's a big movement in Japan. There's now an American association. It's called Forest Therapy, they call it. And there's an association in place now, and they are training forest guides. So it's a movement that is up and coming.
Very cool. Thanks, Tom. All right. So any other member comments? Okay. Then it's on to plan reviews.
They're out there for you to start with. I think the first one that I have up on top, Doug, is that the McDonald's one, I think?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're going to be, there were trucks. I go to work that way. So there were trucks, no.
Yeah, 'cause I stand upside down the other night.
Putting stuff in the store.
Okay.
Okay, the McDonald's, they're going to be doing a redo of it with the speedway going in up there. They want to modern up their site, so this is all they're planning. The only trees that are in the right of way that we can dictate are actually these. American hornbeams is what they had there, which I have no problem with that, as they're small. However, I got a call this afternoon from our engineering department, and the engineering department does not want these trees put in here due to the fact that there's going to be some visibility issues, and then also it's a big expansion for a turn lane in here, and so these trees would actually end up being wasted.
So even if they're upright.
Right, so that's a conversation that Dave will have to have with McDonald's, that they're going to need to find somewhere else to put these hornbeams, or they'll have to contribute to the tree fund, or have it planted somewhere else within the city, close by, maybe even the park behind the Oakhurst Park or somewhere like that. So, but
So that's all for now.
No, we can approve the plans. We just what we'll do is make the suggestion which those are taken off.
Is this area also owned by McDonald's? Is that where the big trucks park? Where's 20?
This is
23.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, I got it. So, yeah, okay. So that's the top area, that's the, all right.
I'm really, are they reconfiguring this? I'm surprised that they're going to put parking up here. I guess there's sort of a grassy area now. That's what they're thinking now.
Well, there's still grass in this area in here. This is still a grassy area. I think this is existing drive now. There might be a fountain or something up in here. Yeah, I think they're getting rid of all that.
You just go through the drive-through.
184 wintergreen boxwood.
That is a huge apple right here, literally.
How many, Boxwood?
184.
That's gonna smell beautiful in spring, isn't it?
Yeah, like cat pee.
Cat pee, cat pee and french
Well,
fries,
plus
I'll be
it, you know,
avoiding.
It gets windy along here. What, is that the kind that,
Is that Chicago?
Right.
Winter, is that Chicago?
oh, it's wintergreen, so maybe,
Oh.
do
Is
those
that
do
Chicago?
okay in the?
Wintergreen do all right.
Okay, so they're okay. But boy, that's a lot. You could, and yeah, this is really boring.
But how big are they when they go in? What's the standard, 3 feet? For boxwood, what's the standard, like, I mean, those are
3
gonna be
gallons.
little.
3 gallons.
Yeah, they're gonna be 12 to 18 inches tall. They're gonna be, they're
Is
gonna
that what these are?
forever.
Yeah, they think
Wow.
so.
Not even
They-
taxes, wow.
Yeah, that's a boring plan, but
I don't think it's boring, I just think they have a difficult shot of survival where they're at. It's gonna be a major loss.
yeah.
What are the trees?
Chat maple, there's 3 of them.
Honey locust.
And imperial honey locust. And, oh, the dreaded Stella d'Oro.
And Burberry.
Oh, dear God.
Rosy glow. It's very McDonald's, it's very,
Yeah.
very nice. But look at that nice drive-through, look at that. You drive right through a garden. You do. You drive through a garden.
Well, I think there's too many of one kind of shrub, but it's McDonald's, so.
Are we giving them a pass, or are we just suggesting that they,
Well, you can only suggest.
Trees,
They
yeah.
can still plant what they want,
yeah.
so.
Can we suggest putting more diverse variety?
Shrubbies?
Of shrubs? We're right up here.
Yep, right underneath your stamp.
Please diversify.
I don't want to see much. It's taxes.
Please diversify the shrub selection.
Thank you.
Too many bucks.
Leopard.
$1.
Is that okay? Anybody else have anything to add before I stamp this?
You might as well write, please remove
Oh.
American Hornbeam
Okay.
from the right of way. Trees.
Is anyone else impressed with the speedway trees they put in thus
I haven't
far?
seen it.
I drove by last night, and they were beautiful. If they can keep them watered,
Yeah. If
they
they
look
keep it up.
really nice up there. I was impressed. I think we were impressed with the plan overall when we presented it, but it looks very lovely. Mhm.
If they keep
Alive.
Yeah.
All the community promotion help, improve Speedway. They do, they had to do a good job. And
It looks very lovely today, or last night, it looked very nice.
McDonald's approved with changes. This is the next building that's going to be put there, Brad is here. This is the next building.
And then west
Yeah,
side.
this is west, okay.
Yes, Ace Hardware's back.
Yeah, okay.
What is it?
I don't know that means.
Okay, that's retail.
Secret.
As far as I know, it's an empty building.
But doesn't everyone feel like we do the first side of it and we approve what they put in the second side, is anyone can maintain it? Till it moves? And are there any trees here, Doug? Where's the trees?
Well, there's already existing trees.
Yeah, but
These are already all planted.
are they alive?
No.
No.
That's,
That's what I mean. I mean, are they? Okay.
Yeah, they had.
They're, I mean, are they alive?
They just, they,
Well, there's that battle between who installed and who's maintaining it. So, but
So
are
in the
they
meantime,
alive? Is
most
this,
of them
is
are
this,
not.
is this company allowed to claim it's there? I mean,
Oh, have they been there for 2 years yet? for the 2-year inspection or?
Right.
Well, these
Right.
trees are all in, all the way down through there. They
Yeah.
did this
Oh, that's
entire
right.
landscape.
They did the whole front.
Well, let's see what they got here. Red Sunset.
Maybe it's either gonna be a bank.
Drive through.
Yeah. Maybe the old Delaware County Bank with out of dealers and more visibility, whatever they call it,
First Commonwealth. I want to
You remember?
members.
That'd be mixed, maybe business on one side and then on the other or something.
Greenway View, I've never heard of that one. Greenway, Texas.
Never heard of Greenway.
Good idea. Yeah, these commercial. Not much going in the way of
Yeah,
nice,
it's pretty
nice
sparse.
trees. It's real sparse. They're not gonna win any awards.
Can we ask that they add more trees in lieu of
Just
what's,
like here and here.
Yeah,
those are the red sunsets? 6?
no, there's areas to put more trees in, right in here and here.
Plenty there.
I mean, there's only, how many? 6 red sunset and 6 large arborvitae.
6-foot arborvitae.
Green giant, how big do they get?
You gotta remember, this was originally, you have to remember, this plan was originally a Bueller's plan a few years ago, 3 years ago, where they put the putting around here, they had all the trees put in, they put in extra trees in the back to make up for any trees that they removed in here, which they removed some pine trees on the hills that they were held
Yeah.
accountable for.
Yeah.
Those trees have been installed already, so you can ask them to add trees, and they're not
They're
required.
not going to.
Well, let's ask them to add some trees.
Yeah, it's,
They could say no,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they're,
I'm just
they're within
letting
their
you know,
boundaries.
you can ask them.
Yeah,
They're not
I
gonna
feel
be
like we
required.
should.
yeah. And,
They're gonna say no.
Right, but I feel like
Yeah.
we should. I mean, that's our due diligence, is that we
That's
should
right.
ask them to do as
Yeah.
such. They have the,
how many of these that they put in are dead now?
It's hard to tell. Some of them are alive, barely alive, and that has a lot to do with the guy that was the company that put them in, his business dealings, and it's a tough situation.
Are you guys going after them to replace the ones that are?
I have gone after him a couple of times about getting trees stood back up, replacing dead material. It's an ongoing battle.
More trees.
You know what it is.
and I know how to
Still
discuss.
say that. But I don't care.
Maybe they want to maintain their visibility, but, you know,
But you've got, yeah.
there's room, you got a buffer zone.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room for more trees.
Yeah. You also have to remember though, you have exit and entrances here. You're talking about putting trees on in here, you're gonna create sightline issues.
Well, I think there's, maybe here, but I think there's room here.
think there's
room on that end. They're not gonna do it anyway, so why are we even,
We can suggest.
why are we worrying about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too bad you can't make those guys replace. Cause man, those trees were laying B and B just bare above ground, laying on their side for like a month and a half.
Yeah.
2 months.
Yeah, and as a community, we're looking at those trees, wondering what's going on, and that's frowned upon as, you know,
That's part of that chapter 1168 talks about the 2-year inspection. You know, for 2 years, if they're not in vigorous health, we gotta replace them. So, Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thanks for coming, Mary.